unique thing, people always ask me, they say, what do you miss? What do you miss about coaching? What do you think it would have been? Being a college football coach at a big time school, what do you think the thing you would miss if you got out?
Money.
What's that?
Getting another
Players? Yeah, that's my answer. What else?
Money.
Oh, the money sucked then. The money was horrible. First year I worked at UCLA, I was making $12,000 a year. See, the world you see today of the $2, $3, $4 million football coaches, I've got friends that have made that kind of money that but when I was there, no. I actually got out of the business because of winning money. It's one of the reasons. But it gives you perspective, but I'll tell you what I missed. All of it. And it was so cool. The scoreboard. Why? The scoreboard told the truth. Didn't it? When you look at it, you walk off the field, said 21-17, you got beat. 28-14, you won. You have all this collective effort and everything going on. But the scoreboard told the truth. And it's kind of in life as you go on. And the problem with life is it doesn't have a scoreboard that you can look at minute to minute, day to day, week to week, or year to year. The scoreboard kind of figure out where you are, because you know how you wake up in the morning, you get dressed, you take a shower, you come here, you go from class to class to class, class to class. There's almost never an end to it. You're just kind of mushing through the process, and yet it's difficult sometimes where I could glance at the scoreboard and I could say, end of the second quarter, 14-10, and I kind of knew where I stood. And I liked that. That was clear and definitive. Totally different question. What's the difference between attitude and weather? Attitude and weather.
You can control your attitude.
Say that loudly.
You can control your attitude.
And you can't do jack about the fact that it's going to rain for the next few days, can you? So in essence, how I determine it, that's a big deal. I wrote down 3 things here before I got into the financial aspect. Because a few months ago, I turned 70 years of age, and I've given talks to a variety of different people, but I'm going to give you 3 keys if you're going to do pretty well in life, financially and every other way. 1, be observant. Why? Be observant. Be observant of everything around you and people around you. They'll tell you things, because if you become an observant individual, what you're going to find is you are acquiring information. Because right now, if you look at it and you say to yourself, are you heavily concerned about finances right now, for the most part? Heavily? If you aren't incredibly engaged in it, why would that be? Yeah, because someone else is paying the damn way. You're not the one paying for it right now. So it's not as if I would not walk into class like this and expect everybody to just want to absorb finance. It's so cool. I'm not talking about spreadsheets. I'm just talking about your own personal finances. But until you've got a vested interest in the process, you will have a vested interest in the process though. And one of the things is it's going to allow you to get from point A to point B in your life over an extended period of time is human capital. What is it? What's human capital?
Skill and knowledge.
What?
Skill and knowledge.
Human capital. You. It's you, isn't it? You increase your human capital, you increase your value. I don't care whether it's in a relationship, whether it's in marriage, or whether it's inside of a business. You got kind of, because most of you are singers out there. You got a unique experience coming up. You've had it so far, but now you really get to get engaged to it. You get in your senior year and you go to college out there. You are about to experience a run for the next 5 or 6 years that is probably, for most of you, the only time you're ever going to get to do this again. And that's to spend full time on developing your human capital. See, because most of the time after you get out in the world and you get through school and you go to work and you have a family and you do all those things, you can get a limited experience, maybe to read a book here or listen or observe or take an extra class. But this is going to be your last run full time really focusing on that. And that really, from an economic standpoint, what value you create, your value proposition, your human capital is going to determine at the other end how you do more often than not. Now, I'm not talking about spiritually, I'm talking about economically, I'm talking about financially in general. It's not, the government's not the one that's gonna screw you, the man isn't gonna screw you, the company, oh, they may all screw you one time or another over a little bit, but at the end of the day, your ability to bring value to the table. I own a company here in town. If I were assessing you and I were looking at your resume, all I really wanna know is what do you bring to the table? What do you bring to the table? Anybody in the world can bring me a problem. What do I want? What? Yeah, say that loud. I want a solution, don't I? Goodness gracious, I can recognize the problems most of the time. That's where this being observant comes in though. It really does, by being observant, being aware of what's going on, gathering information. Because what I started to say a minute ago is Americans don't get into trouble because they're stupid from a financial standpoint. They get into trouble because they make decisions without having good information and all the facts. And sister, we were talking about it before. I give this entire talk to people something about student loans. You are in a situation where you very nearly can make probably one of the dumbest decisions you're ever going to make in your entire life, which is to borrow a lot of money to go to school. Be aware of that. I mean, you kind of hear a little bit about it, about student loans. Take a look at your financial situation. Take a look at your parents' situation. And take a look at reality, okay? And I talk all the time, and the dumbest one, we were laughing about it before, is the guy or gal that goes out and borrows $100,000 to get a degree in psychology. This is so dumb, it's mind-boggling. Why? Well, not only might not have a profession in the future, but what's the profession going to pay? Not enough, right? If I'm going to borrow $100,000, I better be doing something that generates hundreds of thousands of dollars out there. I got a nephew who goes to Villanova, wants to be a social worker. He's an idiot. He's a great kid. Now, he's got a rich father, so he's not paying for it. But could you imagine the kid going to Villanova or going to one of those nice big Catholic schools somewhere, borrowing $200,000 to do it to come out for a $35,000 job? I'm not going to borrow $100,000 and become a teacher. No disrespect, sister. But you know what I'm saying? You know, I can be a great teacher. I can go to Chattanooga State for 2 years, and I can go to UTC for 2 years. I can live at home. I can go online, and I can go in the Hamilton County school system and teach if that's what I want to do. But I sure am not going to go to Sewanee and borrow $200,000 to come out with a teaching certificate. Why?
It's not financially smart.
It just doesn't match up, does it? And how far does it put you behind the 8 ball for the next 5, 10, 15 years out there? I mean, you may not know these people right now, but you have 35-year-olds out there walking around with $75,000 or $100,000 worth of student debt, compounding at 6 or 7% a year. That's the reason they're not getting married till they're 30 or 35 years of age. It's the reason why they're renting rather than buying. So unfortunately, there are going to be a few situations that are not going to confront you 10 or 15 years from now. They're going to confront you next year. Now, if mom and dad are really willing to write a check, that's great. But you know the other thing you might want to think about? Some parents aren't completely financially honest with their kids about where they stand. You can have parents that can stretch, you know, the parent may say, great parenting thing, when they say, well, Mary, you do good in school and you can go wherever you want. Well, the reality is in the last 10 or 15, that may have been what their parents told them, I don't know. But in reality, if you got parents that are having to borrow a significant amount of money, that jeopardize their economic future so you can go to school wherever you want to, be more engaged with that process in general. Be observant. Next thing on my list, be diligent. Be diligent. One of the things that I am most proud of relative to my own career, I got a fake ID when I was 14 years old. She must have one over there too. But it wasn't a good drinking. You know what I was trying, I grew up in Southern California. I got a fake ID, but I was already like 6'1", because I played college football, and I was a big kid at 14 or 15. You know, 6'1", 6'2", 190, 195 pounds at that point. Yeah. So I got a fake ID so I could work during the summer. And I got a job, you know what, any of you ever been to IHOP?
Yes.
All right, I went to International House of Pancakes, right? That's how old they are. Think of how old I am. International House of Pancakes, and I was a busboy. But you know what I was? I was freaking great. I was a great busboy. My next job was working in a donut shop. Now that was a dumb one. I did that because the guy that owned the donut shop's daughter was really hot. So I thought it'd be good. The way I was going to get close to her was work with her dad in the donut shop. She wasn't that hot. Being in a donut shop was a terrible job. So that one I don't recommend. But my biggest point though about being diligent is there is a mindset out there by a lot of people that when I get a great job, I'll do a great job. Doesn't work. It's not like you walk in here and you flip a switch on. If you're not diligent at whatever it is you're doing, if you're not diligent here, you're not going to be diligent there. It's something that compounds on itself over an extended period of time. And you know, it's not that big a deal. If you gotta wake up and come here every day, why not do it good? Because you gotta do it either way, don't you? I mean, you're gonna be here and you can kind of slothfully go through the process, or you can do it pretty well. Because the last thing on this list is really simple for me, and this one is something that I look for in people today, and I did not understand until I wrote at 16 or 17 years of age. Be kind. Be kind to everybody. Now, excuse my ignorance. Is Notre Dame that much different than a lot of the schools? Do you guys still have a decent amount of cliques in this school?
Yeah.
You got the cool kids? Well, the neat thing is this. When you come back to the reunion 20 years from now, all the cool kids are going to be working for all the nerds. I love it. They do. Man, the nerds figure it out. The cool kids rely on their looks and their charm, and that crap doesn't go anywhere in the real world at the other, unless you're a model. So if you're the least bit depressed about the fact that you're not the coolest kid in the school, don't give it a second thought. Because I can tell you what, I got more money, influence, and power than 99.9% of the cool kids, and I wasn't a cool kid in high school. Now I stayed a little pissed off about it for a long time, and it edged me on to the other end to say, you know, I want to go out there, I want to perform, I want to be diligent, I want to do all of those things. But there's never a point in my life, and I try to pride myself in it. I'm not as good at it as I would like to be, and I want to continue to get better. Kindness is everywhere. Kindness is when you walk into the convenience store. It's when you hold the door open for somebody. When you're walking down a hallway and you put a smile on your face. Maybe to some guy or some girl that's not particularly cool or not particularly the sharp person. But what I want to know if you're going to work for my business, and so do a lot of my friends that own companies, I want to know what kind of person you're going to be. I want to know it from the standpoint of your intellectual capital, your human capital, but I want to know it from your soul and spirit. Are you the kind of people that other people really want to be around? And the interesting thing about that, it's easier, it's a lot easier on you emotionally to be kind than it is to be a jackass. It takes work to not be nice. It really does. It takes you pointedly waking up in a bad mood with a bad attitude about the weather or whatever it would be out there. But when you start thinking about it, if you're observant and if you're diligent and if you're kind, chances of you doing real well from an economic standpoint and probably from a social standpoint are going to be pretty good. Okay, now the finance. I told Sister Mary Rebecca this.
The black one works better, Jim, sorry.
Okay.
That green one doesn't work
All
very
right.
good.
Couple of things I want you to think about here. I'm going to discuss 2 or 3 principles with you on general finance. I do not expect you to remember them long term. But here's what I hope. What I hope is somebody else will say the very same thing to you again someday. Okay? And after you've heard it from 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people, you'll begin to figure out, boy, this is one of the important ones. Does that make sense? That's really what we're trying to say here. And I want you to think of going forward. Think of your life from the financial standpoint, whether it's you or you and a spouse, whatever it's gonna be, okay? Your company. You get out there in the real world and you go to work. Now, you may be working for company XYZ, but this is your company, your financial situation. There are only 2 spigots that come out of this. What would they be in your financial company?
In and out.
You got it. In and out. What does in represent?
Liability.
Income.
What's that?
Liability.
Yeah. No,
Things,
assets.
yeah.
It could be revenue, it's money coming in, okay? It's cash flow, basically. How much you make, or what you refer to after you pay the taxes out, would be what your take-home pay would be, right? And what's out?
Your liabilities, right?
Yes. Out, or I guess an easier word would be what? Expenses.
Yeah.
What are you bringing in? What are you paying out? That is 95% of the game. If you take out more than you bring in, you're dead, economically. If you can't figure out how to live within the framework of this, you're dead. So, in's gonna be important. Out, if I'm gonna have a control over in and out, what's that dirty word that people never wanna hear about finances from a personal standpoint that they're probably gonna have to do? They're gonna pay taxes. But I'm saying in's after you pay the taxes. If you're gonna handle in versus out, if you wanna know what's going on, it's in's easy, isn't it? That's how much money comes into the checking account each month from your job or what your investments or whatever it would be. Out is part of a budget, isn't it? Nasty word. But if you can't figure out how much you're spending on a month, because if you're gonna get ahead over an extended period of time and you're bringing in 4,000, and you look at your budget and you're spending 3,000, then I've got 1,000 in here that I can save in some way, shape, or form for something. I won't even talk about investment strategies or all that stuff today. But if you can't get this right, and the problem is, there's a category in your budget. Have you ever tried to put a budget together yet? On just for yourself?
Yeah.
The category that just is mind-warping down at the end of your budget is that miscellaneous. Miscellaneous is the part of the spending that you cannot account for. Okay? Miscellaneous takes place at Burger King, it takes place at any number of random places out there when you're trying to figure out where did it all go. See, it's one thing to say I'm bringing in 4, I'm spending 3, I'm saving 1, but a lot of people that are saying this aren't saving the 1,000. They've actually got nothing left over here, and they can't account for the fact that the spreadsheet or the legal pad says I'm spending 3 and I'm bringing in 4, but I'm not saving anything. Well, if that's the case, then my out's not 3, is it? What is it?
It's 4.
It's 4. That's exactly right. And so what to save is 0 in here. So as you get farther along, and even, now my daughter is a partner in our business. She's 37 years old. She graduated in 1999 from Baylor School here in town. She went to University of Tennessee, got a degree in finance, got a master's in accounting, got an MBA in risk management. Her and her husband are 37 or 38 years of age, 37 or 38 years of age, and they've saved more than $1 million without me giving them a penny, and they paid for a $600,000 home. You don't think they understand in and out? Man, they got a handle on it. Now, they had good job, very successful at what they're doing. but they save better than 50% of everything they make. They're the far end of getting it and understanding it. And not everybody's gonna be in that situation. But I cannot tell you, we probably have 400 clients. I have at least 100 clients that had a husband and wife, had a combined income well under $100,000. I'm talking about people who are making $40,000 or $50,000 a piece in normal, middle of the road jobs in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I've probably got more than 100 clients like that that have saved somewhere between $1 million and $2 million. Because when they made 48, they spent 36. When they made 60, they spent 40. When they made 70, they spent 42. They never, what they always did is they got raises, they increased the amount that they were saving. Because what happens with most Americans, it happens with young people too, more so I think than I've seen it in the last 10 or 15 or 20 years. And I don't want to use this critically, where the old guys just bitching about the young people, but I think there is a little bit more of a sense of entitlement than there has been in our country. In entitlement, how would entitlement work out for someone your age? You go to private school, and I'm not saying that we take it for granted, maybe, but to some extent, we might a little bit. I live in a home with my parents, and it's 3,500 square feet, and the home costs $300,000, and it's really a nice home. There's almost this feeling at 25 or 30 years of age, when I get out of school, I'm supposed to be able to continue to live in a $300,000 house. I'm supposed to be able to continue to drive the same kind of car that I was driving when my parents were paying for it. And a lot of times the reality is you're in at 25 doesn't support your lifestyle that you had at 17. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And what we try to do is we try to say, I am deserving of that lifestyle. I am entitled to that. You are not entitled to jack. Nothing. When you get, not from a financial standpoint. It's your human capital that ultimately is going to determine how this works out. But I can promise you in this town, I know doctors that are cardiologists, and their in is $80,000 a month. Man, they make a lot of money. Except their out is 82. Yeah. Oh, the people I know that make $500,000 or $600,000 a year that can't rub two nickels together. Not very bright, but not completely uncommon. Now, most of the time, a majority of people can get this out. They get this okay. They get this out thing all right. What they don't do is get more in. That goes back to that conversation at the very beginning about human capital. You see what I'm saying? In order for you to increase in, I mean, it's difficult. It's difficult to go out there, not at 25 years of age, but at 45 or 50. If your income is $40,000 or $50,000 a year, it costs so much to live today that first 40 pretty well gets eaten up. But from an economic standpoint, to increase the in, I've got to create a value proposition. It may be going into business for myself. It may be working for the other guy. It could be any number of things out there. But in reality, this next 6 years, aside from going to college and having a good time and enjoying yourself, is you are working to increase the potential on this side. And that's why I was talking about the diligence and working on yourself and getting better. And ladies, particularly for yourself, you live in a day and age, I wouldn't, nothing personal, guys, but if I'm that girl and I'm looking at you, I'm not waiting around to see whether you make it. The beauty of not the Me Too movement and some of the stuff you see going on political, but the beauty of Me Too is anybody in this room, this doesn't apply to simply guys, this doesn't apply to simply girls. You've got an opportunity out here to go out and take care of yourself, increase your own human potential. Now, if you marry someone else that thinks like that, then you end up like my daughter and son-in-law, and they do really well, and they save a lot of money. And if you're having a relationship with someone that doesn't think that way, I probably don't. you start making decisions, take a hard look. This is this is negative as I'll get out. But you do need to be aware of the fact, are the people that you're involved with, not only from the standpoint of someone that you would be involved with romantically, but the people that you hang around. If you hang around a bunch of people that do not see it this way, find some better mentors. I mean, you want to know why your parents send you to Notre Dame, or why I sent my daughter Jamie to Baylor? I wanted her to be around people that, for the most part, felt as if they were going someplace. I wanted them to be around. There was never a discussion about where she was going to go to school, or if she was going to go to college, because everybody that she knew was what? Going to go to college. So you don't, from most, I'm not saying this will be the case for all of you, and I'm not saying that college is the end-all thing, because you can go out and be an electrician and make $100,000 a year out there. I don't mean to imply that. But I would imagine most of the people here that are sitting as seniors at Notre Dame plan on be going to school somewhere next year. Is that right? Is that correct? Okay. But just remember that you got an opportunity here on this side. All right, you do one more. Sister, how are we doing on time?
Fine, we go until 1:50, but you don't have to go all that time if you don't want to.
Oh, I don't.
I'll just teach when you're done,
No,
so.
you're talking.
I got you, I can keep talking, right, guys? Okay. Sister and I were talking about before. Has anyone talked to you much about the idea of compound interest?
They take a class called personal finance.
Okay, okay.
And then we did talk about compound interest at the beginning of the year.
Anybody ever heard of the rule of 72?
My grandfather, he told me what it was.
Did he?
Yeah.
Okay, let's,
Remember.
all right, I'll give you just a brief overview. Whatever let's say you were gonna invest in the S&P 500, you're gonna go buy a generic index fund, and you were just gonna own the broad stock market, and let's assume for a second that that broad stock market averaged over 40 or 50 year period of time, averaged 8%. Whatever you think your investment's gonna average, divide that into 72, and that tells you approximately how long it takes to double money. Okay? So if you had a 10% return, how long would it take to double money? 7? 7.2? If you had a 7% return, divided into 72 would be 10, right? 8% and 72 would be 9. Tells you about how long it takes to double money. So, have any of you ever heard of the term Roth IRA? A Roth IRA is something the United States government lets you do where you can put up, if you're under 50 years of age, you can put $6,000 in the Roth IRA a year. You don't get a tax deduction before it, but it all grows tax deferred and it all comes tax free out at the other end. So let's assume for whatever reason, let's take one $6,000 contribution. You come out of the school, you get a job, and you just said, okay, I'm gonna put $500 a month into this Roth IRA, 25 years of age. And I go, okay, I got age 25, and I make one $6,000 contribution, and I put it in the generic American stock market. All right? We assume that 8% rate of return for a second. All right? We get to age 34. What's the value going to be? Rule of 72. Divide the 8 into 72. Takes 9 years. 25 to 34. What should happen to the 6? Should double. Right? And I said it tells you about how long it takes to double money. All right, so now we realize we're only talking about one $6,000 contribution. We're talking about the contribution that you made at 25 years of age. You're now 34, that one piece. Are you now 43? What is it?
24.
All right. You're now 52. 61.
And 96.
Now, we just created $1/10 here. $1/10 based on one $6,000 contribution that you made at 25 years of age. That's what happened to $500 a month. What would we assume happened if we made another $6,000 contribution at age 26?
It doubled.
We'd have almost, we might not be, we'd be 1 year short of that, but we might have 95, right?
Yeah.
So we're saying $12,000 worth of contributions at age 25 and age 26 would be worth right at $200,000 to you. We're saying that third contribution at age 27 would be worth $300,000. Do you see in a 10-year period of time where from 25 to 35 years of age, just the contributions of $6,000 a year between the age 25 and 35 would give you $1 million somewhere down the line? Now the interesting thing, I'm trying to tackle a way to say this from my own standpoint without, it doesn't, I don't want to come across the way it's going to come across when he's talking about my own money. But for the longest period of time, I would put money away. And the most, like, the first year you put the $6,000 in. Maybe at the end of the year, that $6,000 has grown to $6,200. The next year you put the $6,000 in, now you've got $12,000 that you've put into it, and maybe it's only grown to 13. So most of the growth is coming from what? It's coming from you saving the money. Does that make sense? It's you putting the money in. You're not seeing massive growth in a 2-year period of time. Well, it's interesting, when I got down here, when I got to around age 55, even though I was saving a lot of money, I was at that point in my life, I paid for everything, the mortgages paid, that was saved, and I was saving a couple $100,000 a year. But my investments off all of what I have saved before was now making more money than what I was saving this particular year. See what I'm getting at? There's going to be a day somewhere down the line, you might be 10 years into it where you're putting $6,000 in and your total return for the year of your investment portfolio is going to be the more, that's what happens to that compounding thing. In the beginning, it's really going to be all based on you saving. In the end, as you move through that equation, the earnings and the ultimate investment cash flow becomes more than the amount of dollars that are being saved. Now, that works long term, okay? We can look at that and say, all right, that's an equation. Now, you've heard of 401ks. You know, you go sign up for a 401k at work. It doesn't matter whether you do it through an IRA or you do a 401k. The principles are going to be the same, whether you're saving $500 or $1,000 a month or whatever it would be. What you're going to find out, though, is not every objective that you can have in the financial world is going to be long-term, is it? I mean, how difficult is it to focus on 4 years down the line at 17? Yeah, it's almost impossible. I get that. So there's a certain amount of money that you put in the 401k that you put aside that's for the future and for that growth, and that's fine. But there's two other kind of goals that we're going to have. If I were thinking of 3 boxes over an extended period of time that I was going to try to fill up, it would be short-term, intermediate, and long. And let's think about that again. Short-term, you ever heard the term emergency fund, cash reserve, that kind of stuff? What's the real importance of that short-term fund?
For emergencies.
What's that?
For emergencies.
Yes. What would, now, emergencies, I would want to go to the Bahamas for a week.
It's like,
Emergencies become, the transmission falls out of your car, and daddy's no longer writing the check, okay? That's when it gets more critical. The transmission falling out is not an emergency. When there's nobody else paying for it, then it becomes an emergency and it becomes yours. So, most Americans that do not have a cash reserve, when they have that event, you know that bumper sticker, blank happens?
yeah.
It always happens. It's just an inherent part of nature out there. Where do most people go when they don't have this emergency fund and they've got a $5,000 air conditioner go out? Where do they go? Loan, bank, or God's worst? What? The 18% credit card. Oh yeah. Well, let me tell you what. That's what 75% of Americans do right there. Okay? Average American has $15,000 worth of credit card paying 18% interest. Do the math on that. Do the math on that. And it's because they never filled this box up. Now, this number is going to be different when you get started. Okay? This number for cash reserve might be $500, might be $1,000 for maybe someone 45 years of age. It might be $30,000 or $40,000 out there. But if this bucket keeps you from having to go borrowing money for emergencies. Now let me go back to that. Remember when I talked earlier about the scoreboard? Let's assume for a second that you get out of college and let's take the student loan. Let's say you got $10,000 of student loans. And that's it. You don't have a job yet. You're going to go look for a job. What's your net worth at that point?
0?
No, it ain't zero.
What you've gotten in college?
It's what? Not 10, it's minus 10. Right? When you figure out net worth, what is it? It's assets minus what?
Expenses.
Liabilities. Yeah. All right, so if I got 0 in assets and I got 10,000 in liabilities, my net worth is minus 10,000. Right? So let's say the only thing I did the first year, let's say, remember I told you net worth is a scoreboard? And I said, okay, let's say you come out of school, you owe that $10,000. I don't care whether it's a credit card, student loan, or whatever. At the end of the year, let's say the only thing you've done is pay that $10,000 off. Let's say that was your goal, year one, pay that $10,000 off. But you didn't save any money beyond that at all. Have you increased your net worth? You most certainly have. How much did you increase it?
10,000.
10,000. Oh, you see what I'm getting at?
No.
So one person might say, well, I didn't save any money. I wasn't successful this year. The other person, because the scoreboard wasn't this in and out, the scoreboard became net worth over here. So, if I'm making $40,000 a year and I figured out how to save $10,000 and live on less or do whatever I had to do, and I paid $10,000 worth of debt out, have I had a great year? You're darn right I have. I've had a really good year because now I'm not looking at rate of return or how much I have in the bank. I'm looking at what I did. Okay? You see how I'm trying to figure out how to measure it now. In my own life, that's how I'm going to measure it. Now, what would I do? Would I pay the whole 10 off and not have any short term? I probably wouldn't. If I made 40 and I could figure out how to save 10, I might have paid 5,000 of the debt off and created my emergency fund with 5,000. It might have taken me a little bit longer period to do it. So I'm not trying to go into the nuance of it. But I am going, what we're really talking about is how we keep score here. So even on myself, what I do is I'll just subtract. I'll sit down once a year. You know how long it takes me to do financial planning for myself now? 30 minutes once a year. What do? Assets, liabilities. I just look at the two numbers. Now, can I do anything? We were talking about the fact we couldn't do anything about the rain. If I've got $3 million invested in the stock market, and that market goes down 10%, can I control that? Not a lick. Absolutely not a lick. 3 million in the market went down percent. If I had all my money in the market, 10% of 3 million would be 300,000. My net worth dropped by $300,000, right? Well, they had a bad year. But let's say at that same point, I actually was able to save $100,000. So it went from 3 to 2.7, but I saved 100. It was back to 2.8. I still did everything I was supposed to do. I understand the net worth thing didn't work that way that particular year, but I'm really not worried about market volatility because I know what those averages are going to be over an extended period of time. But it kind of tells me where I'm at. So as we get through this process now what would an intermediate be? Could be. Probably you're gonna build that into your annual budget though. But let's say you go out and you buy a used car that costs you $10,000 and you drive it for 5 or 6 years, but you'd like to buy another car 5 years from now. You know, you go out and you get a Honda Accord or something like that. How long can you drive a Honda Accord? Forever, forever, okay? Because here's the next thing that I'm beginning to figure out that I'm already, and this will put you light years ahead of your peers 5 or 10 years from now. Car payments are not normal. We see it all the time though, don't we? It's normal in all of our households. Car payments. It's idiotic. Why do I not have a problem with a mortgage and I have a problem with a car payment?
Because a car can.
Gonna have it longer. What else?
Your house is gonna increase in value.
What is she saying right there? The sister's right.
Your car.
One is an appreciating value. If I own that house next year and I pay $200 for it, it may be worth $205. What's that car gonna be worth next year? More or less? Less. Because it's going to depreciate in value. Now I am borrowing money. I am borrowing $30,000 and I'm paying it out over a 7-year period of time, and at the end of that 7 years, that $30,000 car is worth $6,000. Dumbest investment I ever made in my life. How do I avoid that? Now I can't avoid the fact that a car is going to depreciate in value. There's a couple of things I can do, though. When I purchase a car, I'm going to drive it a long time. I'm not going to be like, you know that new car smell? Have you ever driven around a new car? You smell that new car thing? How long does it last?
Not long.
2 months.
2 months? 3 months? And then what kind of car does it become? It becomes a damn used car. It's no longer a new car. And I'm just taking a depreciation hit on that thing, going out and buying that new car. So first off, if I don't have a lot of money and I go get a job at 25 years of age, am I buying a new car or an old car?
Oh,
I'm buying an old car. And even if I have to borrow a little money for that, what I'm setting myself up for at 25 is the fact that I am never going to borrow money for a car again, and this baby is what's going to make that not happen. Because I am beginning to put money in an intermediate fund. Now, what can that be for? That could be to pay for a wedding 3 years from now. That could be to pay for an automobile 5 years from now. That could be for a down payment on a home that you would like to move in 3 or 4 or 5 years from now. It could be for any number of things that are not short term, but they aren't 30 or 40-year goals and objectives. So now, we can look here and we can say, okay, we got these 3 boxes. Now we go back and say, remember the discussion about in and out? All right, so we got 4,000 in, and we got 3,000 out. If we can really identify the $1,000, and we're just getting started out there, that $1,000 in that month that we could save potentially could get split up into 3 different buckets, couldn't it? Am I gonna, if I have no cash reserve, am I gonna put 100% of my money in the 401k? Why? Well, I have other goals, and if the air conditioner goes out, or the transmission drops out, I may have put money in my 401k, but I got no money in my short-term cash reserve, and I'm using the credit card. So, and what we really begin to see is we've got 3 potential different objectives here, don't we? It's no different being a coach from a football coach. I mean, if I really break it down, I got offense, I got defense, I got kicking game, right? I get 3 different aspects of it. If I'm horrible in one of them, I'm not going to win a lot of games. It's the same thing here. Now, you know, $1,000 may not go that far in the very beginning. So if I could only focus on one of them in the very beginning, what one would it be?
Short term.
Yep, it'd be short term. Now you may go to work, you know, let's say you go to work for a company and they got a 401k though. That one gets a little tricky. Because the 401k, sometimes they'll have a company match, where if you put in 6%, they'll put in 3. So let's say you're making $40,000, and you put in 6% of $40,000, that's $2,400. But if you put in 6, they'll match 50 cents on the dollar for 6%. So if you don't put in 6, you lose their 3. Now you're giving up free money, aren't you? If you were making, are you following me here?
Yes, sorry.
So if they're willing to put, if they're willing to match, if they're, you put in 6%, they'll put in 3%. Now, they may not do any more than 3, but let's say they do 3. Well, I'm always gonna go to the minimum they match, right? Because I wanna get the 3 that's free. I'm putting in $2,400, they're putting in $1,200. I just got a 50% return on my money for not doing anything but participating. So I'm always gonna do that company match, even though I'm short over here. But if I was doing a company match over here long-term for the 401k, for the 30, 40-year stuff, then every other penny, if let's say this $1,000 a month that was the difference between in and out, $12,000 a year. And I might say, okay, I got $12,000 a year, but $2,400 of that went into my 401k, and there was $9,600 left. Maybe the first year, all of that $9,600 would go to my short term. Okay? I'm trying to build up that short term where I've got an emergency fund. And that emergency fund could get a little bit bigger over a period of time, because ideally you want it to cover an emergency, but you might, let's say a disability, let's say you have a car wreck. Let's say something happens in your life where you can't work. Something goes on for a period of time. You would eventually like to get your emergency fund to cover about a year of expenses. Now that could be a lot, couldn't it? You could see if your expenses were $3,000 a month, you might ultimately say over a 4 or 5 year period of time, I would like to build a $30,000 or $35,000 cash reserve. And that's not going to happen overnight. But what we do see is we got short, we got intermediate, and we got long. And all three of them play different roles. And to the question, I think when I asked that question about how difficult is it to think long term at 17, I would advise you not to necessarily, I would take the term retirement out of my vocabulary. Literally completely out of my vocabulary. I don't use the term much. What I am looking for out of this, I mean, you know, I'm not a money hoard. I don't live for the fact that I've accumulated net worth. I mean, it was part of the goal and objective, but when I'm 70 years of age, I still run a company. I got no need to work, and I work 50 hours a week. You know why?
Because you love your job?
What?
She said, because you love it.
Because I like it. Yeah, because I love doing it. I'm not here because I have to be here today. There's a million other things I can be doing right now. I like giving this information out. Some of you listen, some of you won't. That's not my problem. But it's giving a person an opportunity out there, and that's what I do inside of my life every day, and I enjoy it. I love to go play golf, but if I had to wake up every day and play golf every day, I'd hate it. If I had to go take a vacation every day, I got friends that have retired, they don't know the difference between Sunday and Tuesday. So it's not about retirement. What it's about, and I don't care what age you choose for it to be, it is about achieving economic freedom. That makes sense? Because if you've got, I don't have to work. I work because I want to work. But you know what I have that most people don't have?
Time.
I have a choice. I have a choice now. And I have the choice because I have, and, yeah, money, all right? I have the choice because I've already accomplished the goal and objective of, I've given myself economic freedom. I've got a friend of mine. He is 35 years old. He is a self-made multimillionaire right now. He's worth about $10 million. He's completely retired. Why? He had economic freedom. You know how he made his money? He's an absolute math whiz.
That's a great idea.
No. He is one of the best online poker players in the world. He is one of the best online poker players in the world, and you can't really do it in the United States. You got to be based somewhere else. It's not illegal, but he was based out of Mexico, not the United States. High risk, high return. one of the most exceptional poker players in the world.
I didn't know you could play poker online.
Yeah, you can. Not based out of the United States for those kind of sums. It wasn't so much to point that out, but it was just to say, he was really smart, you know, and he quit. He completely walked away from it, even though he was the best in the world. Because it was high risk. And you know what he realized he had already done?
Made much money.
He achieved his goal. He wasn't interested in retirement, he was interested in economic freedom. I'm not doing this so I drag my ass around at 75 years of age when I'm too old to spend the money. And what I'm looking for out of this process is economic freedom. I'm looking for choice. I don't want to be down here working for some, I mean, I'm sure you've got parents. Have you ever had your mom and dad come home and bitch about people they work for? Well, you don't have to say, but I'm sure you have, okay? You know, I don't care. You know the reason I don't bitch about the guy I work for?
You are the guy.
Because I am the guy I work for. That's exactly right. Now, the rest of them may be bitching about the guy they work for. I get that. I understand that. But also, what I try to do in the framework of that, remember when I said be observant, be diligent, what was the third one? Design. And because I know that every day, I treat those people with the utmost respect 100% of the time. And if I ever get slightly out of line, I apologize. That's how you're supposed to do it on the top side. If you want your economic freedom, you work with other people and help them achieve theirs. This is the kind of financial, have we talked about incredibly complicated stuff here? It doesn't get a lot harder, guys.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, the representative from AFLAC comes to speak to the faculty, and she's, you know, she has that critical care insurance, and then there's all different other kinds of insurance. What would you suggest in lieu of getting that kind of insurance, making your short-term build up in case you have get cancer or whatever? She told this story that she bought the AFLAC insurance personally, and then 9 months later, her husband got cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it, you know, that accrues medical bills, and then also he couldn't work, so
Yeah.
the opportunity cost lost too.
You know, that's a very good question, is how much am I willing to pay for the insurance versus how quickly can I make myself self-insurable? I will tell you, my choice was never to buy that stuff personally.
Okay.
My choice was to figure out how to build this piece of it up.